Pokémon UNITE. You've heard of it, and you might have played it back upon its release. You probably made fun of it at some point, but maybe you decided it might be the right time to jump back in and give it another go. Pokémon UNITE has had a fantastic last few months where the devs have been more communicative and been responding to what the community has been asking for in the past year. This makes it the perfect time to jump back in the water and give it a go. So I'd like to welcome you to the complete beginner's guide to Pokémon UNITE. If you don't know who I am, welcome, I'm Sulu. I've been playing UNITE since its launch in 2021, and I've been playing at the pro level ever since the first season. I'm sharing my secret sauce to climbing and improving on this channel, so make sure to drop a sub and like the video if you are new. Let's start from the ground up. Pokémon UNITE is a MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. This genre of game has been popular for decades now, with some of the biggest names being Dota and League of Legends. All MOBAs typically share the same basic concepts and some extra fine details for each one. Pokémon UNITE has a map with 2 lanes and a middle area, which we call the jungle or central area. This is the same for both sides of the team, for your team and for the enemy team. Each lane has 2 goal zones, and you have one home zone in the middle next to your base. The premise of Pokémon UNITE is simple. It's a 5v5 game where every person gets to pick and control their own super duper cute Pokémon, and you aim to score more points in these goal zones than the enemy team by the time the 10-minute timer runs out. If you do that, boom, you win. But how do you get points to score, you might ask? This is done by knocking out the enemy team's Pokémon and stealing their points, or by getting a last hit on a Pokémon in the wild. You play Pokémon UNITE by selecting which Pokémon you want to play out of over 50 available Pokémon in the game that you can purchase at any time with in-game coins or earn them through missions. And of course, you get a couple of free ones at the start of the game. There are 5 classes of Pokémon in the game. And these are attackers, all-rounders, speedsters, defenders, and supporters. Every single Pokémon in the game fits into one of these 5 categories and can help you decide what you want to play, when. When you pick a Pokémon to play and load into the game, you start off as level 1, the same as everyone else, and you will level up as the game goes on, up to a maximum of level 15. Your Pokémon will evolve upon reaching a certain level, and some Pokémon of course don't evolve. Every Pokémon in the game has abilities and unique mechanics. I'm going to use Blastoise as an example. Blastoise has 3 abilities, a passive and a basic attack, which is a lot similar to the other Pokémon in the game, which have some extra abilities, but the majority have 3. Let's start with something that every Pokémon has, a basic attack. For Blastoise, their attacks become a boosted attack, with every 3rd attack dealing 3 instances of damage, slowing enemies by 50%, and reducing Blastoise's move cooldowns by 1 second. Every Pokémon in the game has some sort of basic and boosted attack. Additionally, every Pokémon in the game has a passive. For Blastoise, this is exactly like the games. His passive is Torrent, which increases its attack and special attack by 20% while at half HP or less. So next, we move on to abilities. Every Pokémon starts the game with 2 moves that are not changeable. You get to pick one at level 1 and one at level 3, and of course this can change depending on which Pokémon you're playing. After this, you will gain different move choices at different levels of the game. Most Pokémon can have a total of 3 moves that they get to pick between 2 different options. Usually, there are 2 different move sets which you can go. And there's a lot of guides for each and every Pokémon out there to decide which moveset is better and why. And finally, every Pokémon in the game has an ultimate ability. You unlock this at different levels, but for most Pokémon it's at level 8 or level 9. You don't get to pick between different moves for this one. This is a locked move. It's its Unite move, the ultimate powerful move. This is super powerful and sometimes a game-changing move that takes time to charge up throughout a game. And so typically you only get to use 2 to 5 of them per game. Every Pokemon has a different Unite ability, but here's a few we can look at. Cinderace's Unite move creates a giant ball of flame, and kicks it towards a designated location. The ball releases a fierce shockwave that deals damage to opposing Pokemon in the area of its effect. This Pokemon Unite move also increases the user's movement speed for a short time when it hits. Machamp, another wonderful favorite from the starters, briefly becomes unstoppable and increases its movement speed by 5%, its attack by 30%, increases defense and special defense as well. And if used again, it unleashes a powerful combo attack that deals damage to the area effect and shoves them, briefly leaving them unable to move. Having so much choice when selecting moves to run and how you play your Pokemon gives a lot of freedom and expression throughout the game of Pokemon Unite and introduces some great mechanics. Held items are equipped before a game to provide a boost in certain categories of a Pokemon's stat. They all have unique effects which complement different playstyles, and they need to be leveled out outside of the battle, so don't forget to do that, and you do that with item enhancers. They max out at level 30, and a Pokemon can only equip 3 of them at a time. Now, I've got a little tier list here to give you guys, these are the most useful held items. Now, of course, this all comes down to what kind of Pokemon you're playing. Because every Pokemon is so unique and different, you have some good items on all of them, but a lot of Pokemon take different items and you can find those in guides. But here's a short example. If you're playing a supporter or defender Pokemon, more often than not, you're going to want to take experience share. Probably like nearly every game. And if you're playing a Pokemon with an attack stat, for example, you might want to take items that include the attack weight, muscle band, or weakness policy. A lot of Pokemon like to take the defensive item, Focus Band, because of its defensive capabilities. It allows you to heal your missing health after you've been sent to a certain percentage of health, which is really good for coming back or surprising opponents. It's mainly up to you to decide what items work best with you and your playstyle, but when learning, try to opt for some standard builds by looking them up on websites like UniteDB or Unite API. Now that we've gone over what held items are, what are the battle items in Pokemon Unite and what they do? As you level up your trainer in the game, you'll get access to a range of battle items, and these range from potion to heal you, or eject button to quickly let you catch up to another Pokemon, or escape from another Pokemon. So how do we pick good ones? Most Pokemon will benefit from one of 3 battle items. X-Speed is a battle item which grants a speed up for a chunk of time and reduces the effect of slows. Full Heal is a battle item that grants the Unstoppable effect, which completely nullifies any crowd control onto your character, and Eject Button is a battle item which launches you a small distance depending on what direction you want it to go. These are the 3 best battle items overall in the game. More often than not, you're going to see them, and they're going to be very useful no matter what situation you're in. So if you're playing a Pokemon, think about which one of these 3 effects are going to benefit you the most. Let's talk about what is a boost emblem. And I'd love to explain, but boost emblems are a whole different beast and they're not going to be easy to explain. So I'll probably do another video on them. But for now, let's dive into a quick understanding. They grant more stats to your Pokemon in addition to all the other bonuses you get. But more importantly, they grant bonuses based as well on the type of emblems you're equipping. So for example, there's like different colors of emblems, and if you pair them together with the same color, you get an added bonus effect. Now, the best emblem I'd say overall to take, especially in ranked, is the white emblems. White emblems give you a massive advantage in health at the start of the game and can let you really escape some nitty-gritty situations that you probably wouldn't have escaped if you didn't have them. I don't think emblems massively affect the game, so you can always use the recommended game emblems, but if you were looking for more optimization, taking these white emblems and looking up other emblem guides is really going to help you in the sense of getting very comfortable with how they work. Take the white emblems and pair them with whatever stat your Pokemon has additional effects for. The map of Pokemon Unite, you're gonna have spawning in different sets of areas of the game wild Pokemon. And these wild Pokemon are one of the ways you can gather points to score in the enemy bases. And they also provide you experience if you get the last hit on them. So if you're playing something that needs levels to scale into the late game, like as an attacker such as Cinderace, you might opt to farm as much as you can so you can gain a lot of experience throughout the game. Now, let's talk a little bit about the objectives of Pokémon Unite and what is there on the map for us to do. So, in the top lane, there spawns a Regieleki, and this is an objective which spawns in 7 minutes on the game timer and respawns every 2 minutes after it's been taken down. If you're in the team that defeats Regieleki, you will gain it as an ally, which will then proceed to walk down the top lane. If Regieleki reaches a goal while it is on your team, it will grant all of your team's Pokemon the ability to instantly score any amount of points. And the bottom lane has the Regi Trio. Just like Regieleki, there is a Regi in the bot lane, and one of the Regi Trio, the Steel, Ice, and Rock Regis, will then spawn randomly at 7 minutes in the game timer. If a team takes one of these down, it will respawn 2 minutes after it's been knocked out. Depending on the Regi you take down, it will give you experience and a buff which is dependent on the Regi that was taken down. For example, the Regi Ice will give you a healing buff, Regi Rock will give you bonus defenses, and Regi Steel will grant you bonus damage and damage stats. Now, of course, we've gone through all these mythical Pokemon, it's now time to get to the main show, and at 2 minutes into the game, the legendary Pokemon spawns in the middle of Baya Sky Ruins. It is Rayquaza. Rayquaza is a difficult Pokemon to take on alone, so make sure to group up with your team to help out taking down Rayquaza. Rayquaza, when taken down, gives a massive scoring shield, which then makes your Pokemon unstoppable when scoring and increases scoring speed. This all matters more when you get the double scores for points for any score made after 2 minutes remaining in the game. Generally, the team which secures Rayquaza also happens to win the match, so it's a pretty big deal. Let's talk a little bit about the goal zones, and they're called score pads, goal zones, pads, they have a million names. Now, they're the only objective that actually wins you the game. You can get Rayquaza, and if you don't score, you're not going to win the game. Tier 1s, so the first tier of goal zones, have 80 points. Tier 2s have 100, and the home base has infinite amount of point scoring. Breaking the goal pads alters the farm on the map, which we'll jump into in a second, and they also provide a flux zone which slows down enemies and speeds up allies. So this is very important to defend and keep up as long as possible. Up till 5 minutes, they will also spawn a citrus berry behind the pad which can heal you for a decent chunk of health if you've been left low by any lane encounters. Now that we sort of understand a little bit about Pokémon Unite, how do we level up? So there are two types of experiences in Pokémon Unite, and experience is what lets us level up. There's active and passive experience. You gain active experience from taking down wild or enemy Pokémon, the Regis, Rayquaza, and scoring goals. You gain passive experience every 5 seconds. You can only evolve your Pokémon with active experience, so make sure to search out for some experience if you need to evolve. EXP, or experience, is Pokémon Unite's only way of having a direct advantage over your opponents without niche situations or items. So make sure to prioritize collecting as much experience throughout the match as you can, because this will come very valuable in the final fight of the game. Make sure to remember to assist your team in doing objectives, taking down enemy goals, and of course taking the wild Pokemon which appear all throughout the map, because they will all be valuable sources of experience. Here's some game mechanics that we probably need to talk about. As stated before, there are 2 lanes and the central area in every game of Pokémon Unite. And there's a distinct difference between going into one of the lanes and going into the central area. The central area becomes the jungler or the central, and it's their job to gank and surprise attack one of the lanes once they finish knocking out all the wild Pokemon in the central path. The laners walk into the lanes and take Bunnelbys, whereby their next objective is to try and secure all the wild Pokemon that is going to be spawning in their area. Now, the main differences will be the types of Pokemon and where they go. Traditionally, you want to send a supporter and an all-rounder to the top laner, an attacker and defender to the bottom lane, and a speedster or attacker into the central area. But don't freak out about this if it doesn't happen in every game or in all of your games. We've covered quite a lot of Pokémon Unite, so it's time to look at actually how do we play this game, or what do everyone do in the game. A basic overview of Pokémon Unite's early game is both teams gearing up for 2 major skirmishes. And these major skirmishes are going to be the 850 birds, which is the Altaria and Swablu, as we mentioned before. They spawn in the lanes at 850, and at 8 minutes, where they spawn in the middle of the map. Depending on how these skirmishes go, one team will be ahead for the first mythical spawn of the game in the top or bottom lane, the Regis. Normally, you want to head over to the bottom Regi to help out your team and get the Regi buff, which can help you fight against the opposition's Pokemon, and then from there, you can proceed into the middle game. Now, Pokemon Unite's mid game usually starts around 6 minutes 30 after the first major Regi has been taken. Generally, both teams will start diverting from the lanes, aiming to do different things on the map, with the objective of breaking the opposition's goal zones or paths. A simple game plan I will recommend to all players playing all-rounders, attackers, and speedsters is to accumulate as much experience as you can by taking down wild Pokemon, and when you have Unite moves, looking for an opportunity to fight the opposing team for one of three things: the Regieleki, the Regi at the bottom, depending on which one it is, and of course to try taking an enemy goal zone. This will all flow into one of the most important segments of the game, but before we talk about that, let's rewind a second and remember not to use your Unite move after 3 minutes 30. This is going to give dire consequences for the next part of the game if you used it past this time. Alright, now all bets are off, and now the late game has ticked in. The timer has ticked into 2 minutes 30 seconds prior to the mighty Rayquaza bequeathing itself to the field. And you need to value your life now, because any deaths could have a sudden change in the game's state, allowing your opponents to quickly defeat Rayquaza. Normally, teams group up around the legendary Pokemon and try to defeat it or defeat each other. This will depend on two factors: how far ahead a team is ahead in score points, or how many bases are left in the game. Most of the time, teams should aim to have a big fight of all 10 players duking it out near the Rayquaza. I'd recommend for you to stick with your team and be mindful of getting taken out in one blow during these fights. This is the most pivotal point in Pokemon Unite and one of the most exciting times of the game. You will develop your own style for how to approach Rayquaza over time, so just enjoy yourself and try to help your team to victory. If the Rayquaza isn't defeated with 30 seconds to go, try to think about making a dash for a score unless the enemy team has a clear chance to defeat Rayquaza. In some situations, you can even think about defending your bases if you're so far ahead. Wow, you probably learned a lot about Pokemon Unite throughout this video, and if you're interested in learning more about a particular Pokemon, I have a bunch of individual guides you can check out on my channel and a bunch of reviews that we've done of gameplays of players who have played that Pokemon a lot. If you'd like to see a specific Pokemon, please just comment down below and I can try to do a guide on that. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It means a lot to me to keep on making these videos, and I really want to just keep doing it for the community. Thank you so much everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day.